At the end of freshman year, I had as my advisor that term John Simon. John Simon the Bad, as he was known, published in New York Magazine film reviews, really rather brilliant. I studied Introduction to Literature with him, and it was truly like a course in the perverse. We read The Duchess of Malfi, we read the Beckett Trilogy, we read all kinds of extraordinary things. And the wonderful thing is that since I'd read all the obvious work on my own in that room of mine, which I occupied overlooking the garden, it was something of a revelation and an influence. Well, it was after my first class in Introduction to Literature that he asked me out on a date. Hardly something I expected. I never thought of professors as possible dates. But there he was, and he was such an extraordinarily erudite and brilliant guy that I accepted, not because I was interested in him as a boyfriend, but because I thought, well, there's some good company. And so we started going out. And I can remember once he invited me for dinner. And he was in the midst of acting out the latest musical comedy that had been a roaring success in London called Salad Days. And he had translated poetry from various languages for my benefit. And it was an incredible performance. And suddenly there was a knock at the door, and he went to the door and opened it, and who was there but a delegation of young male undergraduates protesting the fact that he was taking me out when I belonged to them. Well, from my perspective, I belonged to neither. I belonged to myself. At the end of the term, there had been an incident. He had become quite ill and asked me to come and help take care of him. And being a good Samaritan, of course, I went, ever innocent. And I was to be in the guest room, and suddenly there he was, trying to get into bed with me. Well, that got him nowhere fast, and before long I found a way to climb out the window and run back to my dorm, which was then Blythewood, the mansion, this beautiful residence which had once belonged to the Chase Manhattan Bank family. And
you know, you mentioned this in the previous video.
This particular incident? Well, erase it then. At
No,
the end
it's
of
fine.
term,
It's
at
fine.
the end
It's
of
just-
term,
Like, well,
At the end
let's
of term.
not stay in freshman year. Let's go on to sophomore year.
just let me talk.
Okay.
It's my life, not yours.
I know, but I'm just saying.
I'm sorry.
You forgot.
You'll have to put up with it. In any case, I said to him at the end of the year, John, given that we have spent some time together, and he had introduced me to his parents and taken me to the ballet, I think it might be better if I had a different advisor next year. So I went off for the summer, and when I came back, he had arranged for me to have the advisor he thought would least suit me, the new guy on the faculty. And when I asked if I could speak to him, because I saw that it was not going to be a smooth transition, he really wanted to keep me as his advisee, I said to him, Professor Simon, can I talk to you privately? And he said to me, well, I don't see why. After all, we didn't sleep together. And sitting at the table was Ralph Ellison and Herbert Brandeis, Elizabeth Stadler.
You already talked about this in the last video.
Well, it's pretty important.
Okay, but. Sorry.
But in any case, I got myself a new advisor. Sophomore year, I was back in the mansion, in my same room. And there was this guy who was with his wife living in the faculty apartment as, I would suppose, chaperones. And goodness me, we certainly might have needed a chaperone. There were some odd things going on in the new dorm. Undergraduate males sleeping in the rooms of young ladies down the hall. You'd go to the bathroom, and there they'd be, you know, some guy when you thought you were in an old girl's dorm. I can remember one girl was dating this famous guy, famous for what? But in any case, he used to arrive in a sports car on the weekend, and we'd all stick our heads out the window to look. I'll have to think of his name. I can't remember it at the moment. But he was famous for, I guess, drawing strange Victorian houses, amongst other things. Well, did I speak about the chaperone? Did I speak about the faculty guy?
What?
Did I speak about that weird guy who come in and
Don't
advise
follow me,
got all
Drive.
wishes?
This is your
In any
video.
case.
I thought you remembered what you said. I mean, it sounds like you already did sophomore year too. What interests you? What do you want to talk about? I mean, if you really want to talk about the same stuff over again, go ahead. But I thought you saw the video afterwards. You don't remember what was in the video?
I did see the video.
So then
afterwards.
talk about what you want to talk about. It's not my video, it's yours.
Well, I don't know that I'm so much ready to talk. What I had written about was this get-together downstairs in the sitting room when all the girls started to chat. One thing led to another, and first one girl said she'd had this weird experience with this faculty person who was living with his wife in the apartment, and it turned out we'd all had the same experience. He was a kind of sexual pervert. And I can recall he'd just walk into the room and stand there and look like he was having some kind of orgiastic experience. It was really very unpleasant.
Why are you, I mean, didn't you know, like, you already talked about how you met Saul Bellow at the swimming pool. You haven't got into how,
Well, I wanted
how
to
your
talk
friendship...
about Mary.
Then talk about Mary. Don't stop going into
Well-
things you obviously don't even enjoy talking about.
Well, sophomore year, I became friends with a younger student. She was a freshman named Mary. And by the end of the year, we decided to be roommates the following year. And so we moved to the new dorm, and we had this great view overlooking the fields and the what was soon to become the new theater and dance center in the old stables, which belonged to the Zabriskie estate. And we just got on like a house on fire. She played the guitar, we sang duets together. We just had the most wonderful time. And one weekend, a boy I had gone out with at Carnegie Mellon came up to visit me, and she thought she'd convenience me by going out for a hamburger with this guy she didn't know. And I waited up for her all night. My friend left. He was going back down to New York to catch a train. I fell asleep, and there was a knock on the door, and a woman had been sent up from the dean's office to let me know that my dear friend Mary would not be coming home.
This is an important event, so first of all, speak up, because if I can barely hear you, then your voice is not being recorded properly. So speak up and either tell the story.
It was
or
a
don't.
dark, moonless night. He had the driver, the guy she was going out for a hamburger with, had his license revoked and been involved in several accidents, serious accidents. But this Mary didn't know. None of us knew it. And certainly the dean didn't know it, Dorothy Dulles Bourne, the sister of John Foster Dulles. And so this kid had a car and took my friend Mary out on a dark, windless night and rammed into a tree, and she was killed instantly. And for me it was just a tragedy. I don't think I'd ever been happier in my life. Certainly not in my own family. Never did I have such a wonderful time with a friend. And I, of course, went down to spend time with her parents and go to the funeral. They were wonderful people. And I rode in the limousine.
Barely audible.
I rode in the limousine to the cemetery with her parents. When I came back to my room, which I had shared with her, I took on the job of packing up all her things, sending them off, as had been requested by her family, to Israel, to some kibbutz. It was very hard for me to deal with her loss, and I, in fact, didn't really want to let her go. So I would go out.
What was her name?
Mary.
Mary what?
I don't remember.
She was your best friend?
Yeah. She was a beautiful young girl, full of life. So, wherever I went, I'd talk to her. I'd go on talking to her. And I was so upset, I don't think anybody understood why I, who was her roommate, not her lover, not her family, not her sister, should be in such a terrible state of grieving, but I was. And as nobody understood it, I became
alienated,
unwell in my grief. And I was unable to write my papers. But finally, the end of term was approaching. Being my mother's daughter, I could simply not finish something I'd started. So I stayed up 8 nights and 8 days on Dexedrine, and I bloody well wrote those 11 papers and got them in by the end of the term. But I don't know as I ever really got over that death, not for a long time. And it was no doubt because of the loss of my friend that I got myself into a relationship which was highly problematic, to say the least. I can remember one time he'd come to pick me up at the door, my professor of Introduction to Literature. And, he was a professor, my professor of the 19th century novel. And I kept him waiting for half an hour. I was packing up for the summer to go home, and he was giving me a ride. And by the time he got to the theater, he was in an absolute rage. And I said, why don't you just open the door and get out? Why don't you just get out of the car? And somehow or other, I didn't remember very well, thinking that I should tell him that was it. I was not going to take his ride, and that was would have been the end of